The restaurant was loud, but in a way that felt deliberate, like it wanted to drown out conversations that shouldn't be happening. I sat at the bar, stirring a whiskey I hadn't taken a sip of yet, my reflection warped in the dark amber liquid. Across the room, Jessica was laughing, really laughing, at something he said. Some guy in a navy blue suit, probably a work friend, maybe a client. I wasn't supposed to be here. She told me she was having dinner with Lisa and Megan. No mention of him. I should have left. Should have walked out and told myself it didn't mean anything. But I didn't. She touched his wrist. It was quick, just a flicker of contact, but it was there. A slow burn of something between them, the kind of thing you don't see unless you know. And I knew. The way she leaned in, her fingers tapping against her wine glass as he spoke, how she tilted her head just slightly when she smiled. That wasn't a polite, oh, you're funny kind of smile. That was interest. That was attraction. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. I grabbed my phone, fingers unsteady, and typed out a text. Me, where are you? Jessica pulled her phone from her clutch, glanced at the screen, and her expression didn't change. Not even a flicker of surprise. She typed something back, set the phone down, and kept talking. A second later, mine buzzed. Jessica, at dinner with Lisa and Megan. Why? I stared at the message, the words twisting in my head. She didn't know I was watching. She had no idea she just sent me a lie while sitting across from another man. I got up. I wasn't thinking about what I'd say or how this would play out. I wasn't thinking about anything except how easily she had done it, how effortless the betrayal was. The walk across the restaurant felt long. I wasn't angry yet. I was clear. Like the moment before a storm when the air feels too still. Jessica didn't notice me until I was right beside her. Her eyes flicked up, and for the first time in a long time I saw fear. Not the kind that comes from danger, but the kind that comes from getting caught. Lisa and Megan, huh? My voice was calm. Too calm. The man glanced between us. Confusion in his polite, corporate smile. Oh, hey. Jess, you didn't say your husband was coming. Jessica's fingers tightened around her wine glass. Adam, what are you? I'm just saying. You texted me that you were with Lisa and Megan. I turned to the guy. You Lisa or Megan? His smile faltered. I'm Noah. Jessica shot him a look like he was an idiot. Like this was his fault. Like she wasn't the one who got caught. Adam, I can explain. I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to hear me over the restaurant noise. If you dance with him, it will hurt me. Jessica swallowed, but her eyes didn't soften. They sharpened, because she knew exactly what I meant. I wasn't talking about dancing. Jessica's expression flickered, just for a second. A crack in the perfect mask she always wore. But it wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was annoyance. As if I was the problem here, as if I was making a scene when she was the one sitting across from another man, feeding me lies like they were nothing. Noah, to his credit, had the sense to look uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, adjusting the cuff of his stupid, overpriced suit. I should probably, yeah, I cut him off, my voice sharp. You should. Jessica let out a breath, long and slow, then plastered on a fake smile. Noah, just give me a second, okay? He hesitated, glanced between us, then stood. He left without another word, but I could see it in his face. He didn't know. He wasn't in on it. He wasn't some long-time affair partner. No, this was new. This was fresh. She was just getting started. And that almost made it worse. I pulled out the chair Noah had just left, sat down across from her, and folded my hands on the table. The anger hadn't hit yet. Not fully. Instead, there was something else, something colder. Jessica sighed like I was exhausting her. Like she was about to explain something obvious to a child. Adam, you're overreacting. I smiled. I actually smiled. Because the sheer audacity of that statement was almost impressive. Oh, really? You lied to me. Sat across from another man. Touched his arm. Laughed at his jokes like they were the funniest thing in the world. But I'm the one overreacting. She picked up her wine glass, took a slow sip, and set it down carefully. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that? I repeated, my voice dangerously even. Then what was it like, Jessica? Enlighten me. She rolled her eyes, as if this was nothing, as if she hadn't just shattered something between us. It was just dinner, Adam. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd act like this. I laughed, actually laughed. Oh, so it's my fault now? I didn't say that. No, you just implied it. So let me get this straight. You lied to me, met some guy for dinner, and when I call you out, it's my fault for being upset. Jessica crossed her arms. Her nails were painted red. She used to wear pale pink, but somewhere along the line, she switched. I never thought much of it before, but now, staring at her across the table, it felt like another thing I hadn't noticed. Another change. Adam, she said, softer this time, like she was trying to calm me down, like she was handling me. Nothing happened. We were just talking. It was work-related. Work-related, right? Because work-related dinners required low lighting, intimate smiles, and lies. I exhaled through my nose, leaning back in my chair. I wasn't going to get the truth out of her. Not here. Not now. But I'd already seen enough. Jessica checked her phone, just a flicker of movement, but I caught it. She wasn't looking at the time. She was checking for messages. Maybe from Noah. Maybe from someone else. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't an almost mistake. This was a pattern. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a few bills, and tossed them onto the table. Enjoy your dinner, Jessica. She blinked. What? I pushed my chair back and stood. You already made your choice. I met her eyes, steady and unblinking. Now I'm gone. And I walked away. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember unlocking the front door, stepping inside, standing in the middle of the living room with my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. What I do remember is the quiet. The kind that stretches out too long, pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing, my thoughts tangled in knots. Jessica was cheating on me. Maybe not physically. Yet. But emotionally? Mentally? She had already checked out. I saw it in the way she looked at Noah. The way she didn't look at me. I didn't even feel angry yet. Just hollow. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't have to check to know it was her. But I did anyway. Jessica, Adam, come back. Let's talk. Talk? Now she wanted to talk? I tossed my phone onto the couch and ran a hand through my hair. My body was moving before my brain caught up, feet carrying me upstairs into our bedroom where everything was the same but nothing felt familiar. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air. The bed was neatly made, the same way she always left it in the morning. Her nightstand had a book on it, a bookmark poking out of the middle. Some romance novel about forbidden love. The irony made my stomach twist. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands together, trying to piece myself back together. I knew Jessica. I knew how she worked. She would come home, act sweet, twist the situation until somehow I was the bad guy for making a scene in public. She'd say it was nothing, that I was imagining things, that I was being jealous and controlling. And maybe if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have believed her. But I did see it. And now I had a choice to make. Stay. Pretend this didn't happen. Let her convince me I was crazy? Or do something I never thought I'd have to do. My phone buzzed again. Jessica. Adam. Please answer me. A few minutes later, another text. Jessica, you're overreacting. And there it was. That same dismissal. That same arrogance. She wasn't scared of losing me. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. She thought I would come crawling back, just like I always did. I heard the garage door open. She was home. I stood up, my heart pounding, every nerve in my body screaming at me to brace for impact. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The garage door rattled shut. Footsteps, her footsteps, clicked against the tile. Slow, deliberate. She wasn't rushing to me, wasn't panicked or flustered. No, Jessica was walking into our home like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just been caught lying to my face. She knew I was here, knew I was waiting. And yet there wasn't a single ounce of hesitation in her movements. I stood at the edge of the kitchen, arms crossed, watching as she set her purse down on the counter, took off her heels, and stretched like she'd just gotten home from a long, exhausting day. Like she was comfortable. She looked up, finally acknowledging me. Are you done being dramatic? The words hit me like ice water to the face. I shouldn't have been surprised. This was classic Jessica. Deflect. Dismiss. Act like I was overreacting so she could keep the upper hand. I exhaled slowly through my nose, keeping my voice steady. So, that's how you're gonna play this? She sighed, rolling her eyes as she poured herself a glass of water. Adam, what do you want me to say? That I'm sorry for having dinner with a colleague? That I should have told you first? Fine. I'm sorry. There. Happy now? Colleague, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. That what we're calling it? She took a sip of water, unfazed. What else would you call it? I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. Are you serious right now? You lied to me, Jessica. Straight to my face. You said you were with Lisa and Megan. You weren't. You were with him. And I saw the way you looked at him. The way you touched him. Her jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She groaned, setting her glass down with a sharp clink. God, Adam, why are you making such a big deal out of this? You're acting like she cut herself off, but I caught it. She was about to say, you're acting like I cheated on you. But she didn't finish the sentence. Because maybe, just maybe, even she wasn't that bold. I stepped closer, my voice lower now. Tell me the truth, Jessica. She didn't move, didn't blink. I already did. I studied her, waiting for a crack, a sign of remorse, guilt, anything. But there was nothing. Just cold, unbothered indifference. It hit me then like a punch to the stomach. She wasn't sorry. Not because she didn't do anything wrong, but because she didn't care. She knew what she was doing. Knew she was disrespecting me, knew she was playing a dangerous game. And she was fine with it. Because in her mind, I wouldn't leave. I clenched my jaw, nodding slowly, a sharp bitterness settling in my chest. Got it. Jessica crossed her arms, sighing like she was already bored with this conversation. You're acting ridiculous, Adam. You need to let it go. Let it go. Like my trust hadn't just been shattered. Like my marriage wasn't crumbling right in front of me. I swallowed down the lump in my throat, the weight of realization settling in. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was who she was. And maybe, just maybe, this was who she'd always been. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Jessica stared at me like she was waiting for something, maybe for me to cave, maybe for me to apologize for calling her out. Maybe she expected me to sigh, shake my head, and drop it. But I wasn't going to. Not this time. She exhaled sharply, irritated. Adam, what do you want from me? I tilted my head slightly, watching her. Watching the way she didn't squirm. The way she stood there, arms crossed, like I was the unreasonable one. I want you to tell me the truth, I said, voice steady. She let out a humorless laugh. I already did. No, I said, taking a slow step forward. You didn't. Jessica rolled her eyes again. It was subtle, but I caught the way her fingers twitched slightly against her arm. She was frustrated. She wanted this conversation to be over. You're looking for something that's not there, she said, shaking her head like I was exhausting her. I don't know what else you want me to say, Adam. I told you I was at dinner with a colleague. That's it. You lied to me, I said again, emphasizing each word. If it was so innocent, why'd you lie? I didn't, she started, but I cut her off. Don't. My voice was low, sharp. I wasn't yelling, but it was enough to make her mouth snap shut. Don't insult me like that. Jessica's jaw tensed. Her nostrils flared slightly, and for a split second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt. Annoyance. Because I wasn't playing along like I was supposed to. She let out a slow breath. Look, I should have told you I was having dinner with him. Okay? Fine. That was my mistake. But nothing happened. And honestly, I don't know why you're acting like this is some huge betrayal. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. A bitter, mocking voice in the back of my mind whispered, because it is. Do you hear yourself right now? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Jessica threw up her hands. Jesus, Adam, I had dinner with a friend. That's all. Why are you so insecure? I blinked. Insecure. There it was. The twist. The manipulation. The subtle way she tried to make this my fault. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. You're good, I muttered. You're really good. She frowned. What? You turn it around so fast, I said, staring at her like I was seeing her for the first time. You make me question myself. You make me the problem. It's impressive, really. Jessica groaned, rubbing her temples like she had a headache. Adam, for the love of God, I'm tired. I don't have the energy for this. Either believe me or don't, but I'm not going to stand here all night defending myself for something I didn't do. She turned, heading toward the stairs. Just like that. Done with the conversation. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my hands balled into fists at my sides. She was walking away. Just walking away. I clenched my jaw, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Jessica. She stopped on the third step but didn't turn around. I took a deep breath, my voice quiet but firm. I just wanted to be enough for you. Her shoulders stiffened just for a second. But she didn't look at me. Then she walked up the stairs without another word. I stood there for a long time after she disappeared upstairs. The house felt different, hollow, stretched thin, like the walls were holding their breath. Like the very foundation of it had shifted beneath my feet. I wasn't going to chase her. That's what she wanted. That's what she expected. She wanted me to follow her, to keep arguing until I got tired and let it go. Until I let her win. But not this time. I walked over to the couch and sat down heavily, staring at nothing. The weight of everything pressed down on me, squeezing my chest until it felt hard to breathe. I replayed the night over and over in my head, searching for some kind of alternative explanation. Some version where this wasn't what it looked like. But there wasn't one. Jessica was lying. She was cheating. Maybe not physically, not yet, but emotionally. She was already gone. And the worst part? She didn't even care. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She didn't try to convince me she loved me. that she'd never do something like this. No, she got annoyed. Like I was an obstacle in her way. Like I was ruining her night by demanding some basic respect. I ran a hand down my face, exhaling sharply. I should have seen it coming. The late nights. The sudden gym obsession. The way she stopped kissing me in the morning before she left for work. The way she barely looked at me anymore. This wasn't a slip-up. This wasn't a moment of weakness. Jessica had been pulling away for months, maybe longer, and I had been too blind to see it. I leaned back against the couch, staring up at the ceiling, my heart pounding. I couldn't stay in this marriage. The realization hit me all at once, heavy and undeniable. There was no fixing this, no going back. Even if she came downstairs right now and begged me to forgive her, even if she swore up and down that she'd never see Noah again, it wouldn't matter. Because the damage was already done. The trust? Gone. The love? Tainted. The foundation? Cracked beyond repair. And maybe, just maybe, she had been waiting for me to figure that out. I sat there for what felt like hours, the weight of it all pressing down on me. At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I heard footsteps. Soft. Careful. Moving toward me. I opened my eyes to see Jessica standing at the bottom of the stairs, wrapped in a silk robe, her arms crossed over her chest. Her expression wasn't sad. It wasn't guilty. It was calculated. She tilted her head slightly. Are you really gonna do this? I blinked, my throat dry. Do what? She exhaled, shaking her head. This whole dramatic silent treatment thing. I mean, come on, Adam. You're not seriously going to throw everything away over dinner. I let out a slow breath, sitting up. This isn't about dinner, Jessica. She sighed, walking closer, her bare feet padding softly against the hardwood floor. Then what is it about? I stared at her. She knew exactly what it was about. She just wanted me to say it, to put it into words so she could find a way to spin it back on me. I wasn't going to play that game. So instead, I said nothing. Jessica let out a humorless laugh. God, Adam. You're so predictable. I frowned. Excuse me. She took another step closer, her lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. You want me to beg, don't you? You want me to break down, cry, apologize, make you feel like you have some kind of power here? She shook her head. But you don't. Something inside me went cold. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Wow. Jessica raised an eyebrow. What? I stood up slowly, looking her straight in the eye. You just said it out loud. She blinked. Said what? That you don't care. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. I never said that. You didn't have to. For the first time all night, she didn't have a comeback. I watched her closely, waiting for anything. Some flicker of emotion. Some sign that maybe, just maybe, there was something left to save. But there was nothing. Just silence. Just an empty stare. I exhaled, nodding slowly. All right. Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly. All right, what? I grabbed my phone off the couch, slid it into my pocket, and turned toward the stairs. She took a step forward. Adam, I'm done, I said quietly. Her expression shifted, just for a second. Oh, come on. Don't be ridiculous. I stopped at the foot of the stairs, gripping the railing tightly. Then I turned to look at her one last time. You made your choice, I said, my voice steady. Now I'm gone. And I walked upstairs, leaving her standing alone in the dark. That I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my own breathing. Jessica never came upstairs. She didn't follow me, didn't knock on the door, didn't even try to fight for me. She knew what was happening, and she was letting it. I turned over, staring at the empty space beside me. The sheets were still neatly tucked in on her side, untouched, like she had already vacated this bed a long time ago. Maybe she had. Maybe she had checked out of this marriage months ago, and I had been too blind, too stupid to notice. At some point, I heard the rustle of movement downstairs, soft footsteps, the quiet hum of the fridge opening, a glass clinking against the counter. She was still awake. I checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. I should have felt something. Anger, grief, rage, but all I felt was tired. I sat up, running a hand through my hair, my thoughts tangled in knots. This was it. The moment where I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be. I could stay. Pretend that what I saw at that restaurant didn't mean anything. Convince myself that she was telling the truth, that Noah was just a friend, that I was blowing everything out of proportion. I could let her manipulate me into believing this was my fault, let her gaslight me into submission like she always did. Or I could finally face the truth. Jessica didn't love me anymore. Maybe she never did. I stood up, my mind clear for the first time in months. I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to wait for her to admit anything, to apologize, to fix this, because she wasn't going to. She wasn't going to fight for me. So why the hell was I still fighting for her? I grabbed my duffel bag from the closet and threw it onto the bed. Pulled open my dresser drawers and started stuffing clothes inside. Shirts, jeans, socks. Just enough to get me through the next few days. I wasn't leaving for good, not yet. I just needed space. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time to exist outside of the toxic fog that had become my marriage. As I zipped up the bag, I heard her footsteps again, only this time they were coming toward the stairs. I didn't pause. I slung the bag over my shoulder, grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and reached for the door handle. Just as I pulled it open, she was there. Jessica stood in the hallway, still wearing that silk robe, her arms crossed loosely over her chest. Her expression was unreadable, no anger, no sadness, just calm. She glanced at the bag on my shoulder. So that's it. I met her eyes. Yeah. She studied me for a long moment and then she smiled. Not a sad smile. Not an apologetic smile. No, this was something else entirely. She looked satisfied. Like she had been waiting for this moment. Like she had wanted me to leave. Something cold curled in my stomach. You think you're punishing me, she said, tilting her head slightly. You think packing a bag and walking out is going to make me chase you? Beg you to stay. I said nothing. Jessica let out a soft, amused hum. You always did have a flair for dramatics, Adam. I clenched my jaw, gripping the strap of my bag a little tighter. You don't even care, do you? She exhaled slowly, as if she were bored of this conversation. You want me to say I care. You want me to cry and apologize and swear that Noah meant nothing. She met my gaze, her expression sharp. But I won't. I felt my heart crack. Actually crack. Because that was it. That was the truth. She wasn't going to fight for me. She wasn't going to apologize. Because she didn't want to. Jessica reached up, tucking a stray piece of hair behind her ear. You were enough, Adam. For a while. Her voice was light, casual, like she wasn't ripping me apart. But things change. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in my throat. And what about your vows? For better or worse? Till death do us part? Jessica laughed softly, shaking her head. We both know people don't really mean that. I stared at her, my stomach twisting. I had wasted 7 years of my life on this woman. 7 years building a home, a marriage, a future with someone who had never truly valued me. She had been waiting for me to figure it out. She had been waiting for me to leave. And now, here I was, finally doing exactly what she wanted. I took a slow breath, nodded once, then stepped past her. She didn't stop me, didn't reach for me, didn't say a single word. And that was all the confirmation I needed. As I walked down the stairs and out the door, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't coming back. The night air hit me like a slap to the face, cold, sharp, real. I stood on the front porch for a second, my duffel bag hanging from my shoulder, my fingers curling into a fist at my side. The house behind me, our house, felt like a stranger's. I had built a life inside those walls, poured love into every inch of it, and now it felt like a tomb. I wasn't sad. Not in the way I should have been. I was angry. Not just at Jessica, but at myself. At how long I had ignored the signs, how long I had let her chip away at me, making me smaller and smaller until I was just a shadow of the man I used to be. I inhaled sharply, forcing the rage down. Now wasn't the time. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I climbed into my car, tossed the duffel bag onto the passenger seat, and gripped the steering wheel. My heart pounded in my chest, my head spinning with everything that had just happened. Where the hell was I supposed to go? I couldn't go to my parents' house. They'd asked too many questions. I wasn't ready for that. And I sure as hell wasn't booking a hotel just so Jessica could sit in our bed, in our house, and feel like she had one. No. I needed to be somewhere familiar. Somewhere I could breathe. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and hesitated for half a second before pressing the call button. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Jesus, Adam, it's 4 a.m. I exhaled. Ryan. There was a pause. A shift. His voice instantly cleared. What happened? Ryan had been my best friend since college. He knew everything about me, including the problems in my marriage. I had never told him everything outright, but he had picked up on enough to know things weren't perfect. "I need a place to crash," I said, my voice tight. "Just for the night." Ryan didn't ask any more questions. He didn't need to. Doors unlocked. I nodded to myself. "Thanks, man." I hung up, started the car, and drove away from the house without looking back. Ryan lived 20 minutes away in an apartment that always smelled like old pizza and whatever cheap cologne he was currently obsessed with. When I got there, the front door was already cracked open. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me, and Ryan was sitting on the couch, a beer in one hand, his eyes scanning me like a detective. He was still half asleep, his t-shirt wrinkled, his dark hair sticking up at odd angles. He set the beer down. "All right, what happened?" I let out a slow breath, dropping my bag on the floor and sinking onto the couch beside him. "Jessica's cheating." Ryan didn't even look surprised. He nodded once, leaning back. "You sure?" I barked out a laugh, shaking my head. "Oh yeah. Caught her on a date with some guy tonight." She lied straight to my face about where she was, and when I confronted her, I let out a slow, bitter exhale. She didn't even care. Ryan whistled low, shaking his head. Damn. That was the thing about Ryan. He wasn't the type to coddle me, wasn't the type to feed me meaningless sympathy. He dealt in facts. In reality. And right now, I needed that. He studied me for a moment. "So, what's next?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? I dragged a hand down my face, staring at the coffee table. "I don't know." Ryan shrugged. "Divorce." The word felt like a gunshot. I swallowed. I had thought about it, of course. But saying it out loud? Making it real? Ryan watched my expression closely. "Look, man. I know this sucks. I know it's not what you wanted. But if she's already checked out, if she's out here dating while you're still wearing your wedding ring, what the hell are you holding on to?" I clenched my jaw. 7 years. Ryan scoffed. 7 years of what? 7 years of her treating you like a backup plan? 7 years of her slowly making you feel like you weren't good enough? His voice softened just a little. "You were enough, Adam. She just didn't want to see it." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. He was right. I knew he was right. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. My entire life was about to change. Everything I had spent years building was about to crumble. But maybe it was already gone. Maybe I had just been too scared to let go of the rubble. Ryan clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Listen, stay here as long as you need. We'll figure it out in the morning." I nodded slowly. Yeah. Morning. The end of my marriage would begin with the sunrise. Morning came too fast. I barely slept. My brain wouldn't shut off, running through every moment, every fight, every red flag I had ignored. The weight of it pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Jessica wasn't my wife anymore. Not in the ways that mattered. Ryan's apartment smelled like stale beer and cheap air freshener. Sunlight cut through the blinds, striping the floor in pale yellow. The clock on the microwave read 8:12 a.m. Ryan was already up, sitting at the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, his eyes scanning me like he was trying to measure how broken I was. I grabbed a cup from his cabinet, poured my own coffee, and sat down across from him. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Ryan set his phone down. "You talked to her?" I let out a slow breath, staring into my coffee. "No, I had a few missed texts from Jessica. Nothing dramatic. No apologies. Just cold, detached messages that read more like emails than anything from a wife to a husband. Jessica, let me know when you want to come by and get the rest of your stuff. Jessica, we should probably talk about how we want to handle this. Jessica, Adam, let's be adults about this." Adults. I scoffed under my breath. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What?" I tossed my phone onto the counter. "She wants to be adults about this." Ryan snorted. "That's rich, coming from the woman who emotionally checked out of her marriage and had the nerve to act like you were the one causing problems." I exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of my neck. "I don't even know how to do this, man." Ryan sipped his coffee, watching me carefully. "Then I'll make it easy for you." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the counter. "You go back today, pack your stuff, and leave. For good." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Leave. For good. It should have felt impossible. It should have made my stomach drop, made my chest tighten. But it didn't. Felt like relief. like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a room full of smoke. I exhaled, nodding slowly. Yeah, yeah, okay. Ryan slapped the counter. Good. Let's get it over with. The drive back to the house felt surreal. Ryan came with me, not because I needed him to, but because he didn't trust Jessica not to pull some manipulative bullshit. He wasn't wrong. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was there. She was home. Ryan parked behind me, killing the engine. You want me to come in? I shook my head. Nah. Let me handle it. Ryan gave me a look but didn't argue. I'll wait out here. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Everything felt too normal. Like I was coming home from work. Like I was walking into the same life I had lived for the past 7 years. But I wasn't. I walked up to the front door and let myself in. Jessica was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a cup of coffee balanced on her knee. She didn't even look up when I walked in. Morning, she said casually, like we hadn't just ended our marriage the night before. I clenched my jaw, my fingers twitching at my sides. I'm here for my stuff. She sighed, finally looking at me. Adam, can we just— No, I cut her off, my voice sharp. We can't. Jessica narrowed her eyes slightly. So that's it? You're really leaving? I laughed under my breath. Wasn't that what you wanted? She exhaled, standing up. I don't know why you're making this such a big deal. I clenched my fists. Because I loved you, Jessica. My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't care. Because I spent 7 years trying to be enough for you. Trying to make you happy. And the whole time you were just— I swallowed, shaking my head. You were just waiting for me to leave. She didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. She just crossed her arms and sighed like this was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. You're being dramatic, she muttered. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. There it was again. That dismissal. That complete and utter lack of care. I opened my eyes and nodded slowly. Okay. Jessica tilted her head. Okay. Yeah, I said, my voice steadier now. Okay. I turned and walked upstairs. I didn't hear her follow me. She didn't come after me, didn't try to stop me. Of course she didn't. I packed fast, not bothering to be careful. Clothes, shoes, personal documents. I grabbed my laptop, my watch, my old college hoodie. I left the framed wedding photos on the dresser. I didn't even look at them. When I came back downstairs, Jessica was still sitting on the couch. She looked up at me, but I didn't stop. I walked past her, walked straight to the door, walked out. Ryan was waiting by the car, arms crossed. He looked at my face and didn't say a word, just nodded. I threw my bag into the back seat, climbed into the driver's seat, and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought, at some point, the weight of it all would crack me open, that the grief would hit me like a truck and leave me gasping for air. 7 years of my life gone. 7 years of love, effort, sacrifice wasted. But as I drove away from that house, away from her, I felt nothing but a strange, eerie sort of calm. Maybe I had already done all my grieving without realizing it. Maybe I had spent the last year slowly mourning my marriage while I still lived inside it, while I still slept next to a woman who had stopped loving me a long time ago. Jessica didn't chase me, didn't fight for me, didn't even pretend to care. And that told me everything I needed to know. Ryan and I didn't talk much on the drive back to his place. He sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone, but every few minutes I caught him glancing at me like he was waiting for me to break. I didn't. Not yet. When we got back to his apartment, I dropped my bag in the corner and sank onto the couch. Ryan disappeared into the kitchen, then came back with 2 beers. He twisted off the cap of his and handed me the other. I took it, but I didn't drink. Ryan sat down beside me. You good? I let out a slow breath. I don't know. He nodded like that was the only answer he expected. You will be. I didn't respond. Just stared at the beer in my hands, watching condensation gather on the glass. Ryan leaned back, resting his arm along the back of the couch. You know what's funny? I glanced at him. What? He smirked. I never liked her. I huffed out a small laugh, shaking my head. Yeah, I got that. Ryan shrugged. Tried to warn you, man. I nodded slowly. He had. So had other people. My brother. A few close friends. They had all seen it, the way Jessica talked down to me in public, the way she dismissed my feelings, the way she made me feel like I was constantly chasing her approval. I had ignored them. Because I thought love was supposed to be hard. Because I thought if I just tried harder, if I just became more, she would finally look at me the way I had always looked at her. But love wasn't supposed to be a competition. It wasn't supposed to be a test I had to keep passing. Ryan exhaled, watching me carefully. You regret it? I thought about that for a second. About the 7 years I had given her. The 7 years I could never get back. And then I shook my head. No, I said quietly. I regret trusting her. I regret staying as long as I did. But I don't regret loving her. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Why not? I let out a slow breath. Because I know I gave it everything I had. I know I did everything I could. And that means I get to walk away from this clean. I finally looked at him. She's the one who has to live with herself. Ryan studied me for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. We sat in silence for a while. Eventually, I took a sip of my beer. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. I had spent so much of my marriage feeling like I was holding my breath, waiting for Jessica to finally choose me, to finally see me. But she never had. And now I didn't have to wait anymore. I was free.